hands together for Rinku Sen.
I have to turn my mic on. Oh, it's on. Wow, that's so amazing. Welcome to Facing Race 2008. On behalf of the staff and board of the Applied Research Center, I want to extend the warmest possible welcome. It's so incredible to see all of you here. We've been, I can't touch that. We've been flooded with people calling over the last 2 weeks wanting to come to this conference, having heard about it. A lot of you are volunteers who worked on the election, helped to turn red states blue and that kind of thing, and we're extremely honored that you decided to spend this weekend with all of us together figuring out what's going to happen next. Last week, like many of you, I celebrated this most amazing moment in our country, the election of the first person of color as the President of the United States. Many of us were together here in Oakland 4 years ago at the Race and Public Policy Conference, which was the predecessor to Facing Race. And but 4 years ago, in 2004, we also had a flood of registrations right after the election, but that was because everybody was depressed and wondering where we could possibly go from here. Today, the possibilities seem endless, and we're in a completely different mood. There's much more hope and optimism here for us. We're going into this conference then with some great opportunities as well as enormous challenges, and those are going to be both of the opportunities and the challenges, the subject of pretty much all of the discussion that we'll be having here. People in this country are questioning for the first time in a major way the supposedly innate wisdom of the free market in ways that we thought they would do after Enron and other corporate scandals, but didn't do until now. Americans are demanding a government that is both transformative, transparent, and also accountable. They're responding to the message that real change starts and ends with us, with all of us, and that we're capable of saving ourselves with heroic feats of fight back. We have the opportunity now, not just in victory, but also in the crisis that generated that victory, the crisis behind the victory, to put out our biggest ideas, to build real support for them, and to move all of our institutions. But there are huge challenges as well. Our people are really struggling. This is a hard time for people. For the last 2 months, I've been traveling the country with my co-author and the hero of The Accidental American, Pekak Mamdouh. Is he here? Not yet, but he will be. In time to sign books at 10:45 or something, 5 o'clock. Our people are really struggling, and Mamdouh and I have been going around the country, and our book is about immigrants and restaurant work and economies, and so we've heard too many stories, terrible stories of stolen wages and deported loved ones. In Portland, Oregon, we were speaking at Powell's bookstore, an enormous bookstore, and there I met a young man who really stuck in my mind. He'd been browsing the architecture and design section, which is right near the place in Powell's where you speak, where authors speak, and he overheard me reading from the book. He hadn't come for the reading, but he overheard it, and then kind of hovered at the back of the room behind everybody until we finished, and then he walked up to me, and he introduced himself. He said his name was Artemio, and he'd been brought to this country when he was 6. That was 12 years ago, he said, and then his voice dropped and became very quiet, and he said, and now I'm illegal, so I can't study or work. He asked me about lawyers who could help him change his status, and I gave him a couple of resources. He wanted to know if I thought he could handle the process himself, just without paying anybody to do it. And I had to tell him that that might actually get him deported, and if that happened, he wouldn't be able to come back for a very long time. There is no real process for someone like him, I said, and he might have to wait until a new law passed. Well, when would that be, he wanted to know. And of course, I couldn't tell him. I had no idea. During our travels, Mamdouh himself told many stories of his own organizing of restaurant workers around the country. both immigrant and native-born, in the largely black cities of New Orleans and Detroit. In New Orleans, black workers who are making their way back to the city years after Katrina are finding themselves shut out of the restaurant jobs that they used to have, even though there are actually more restaurants now in New Orleans than there were before Katrina. These workers, these black workers, have been replaced by temporary migrant workers, guest workers who have been brought in from other countries, who are basically indentured servants, who have no freedom, no rights, no ability to organize on the job. And Mamdouh is now trying to bring these two sets of workers together. But he says that when he goes to New Orleans and does surveys with restaurant workers, both the black workers and the immigrant workers hug him. They hug him because he actually asks them what it is they're experiencing and what their lives are like. And many of them tell him that they are living under highway overpasses and essentially on the street because they have nowhere else to go. Occasionally, before this moment happened, I would hear people in the movement say something like, maybe if things get bad enough, then everyone will finally rise up. There was a real desire for that finally big rise up. And this election outcome appears to support the idea that we can wait, or should wait, for things to get bad enough so that people feel finally the need to rise up. But I worry that as things get worse, which they will in this next period, if the economic markers are accurate and we can believe them, I worry that if things get worse, that the energy and the drive to organize, the drive to rebel, the drive to do something else will actually go underground. And so I would suggest that we cannot wait. We have to keep moving. In order for people to contribute their full selves to movement, they need to not be working 3 jobs. They need to not be losing their homes or health care. They need to not be spending all of their time paying off student loans. So we cannot wait for things to get worse. People need us to keep moving so that they can get their legal status, find decent jobs, keep their homes, and live out their full potential. That young man that I met in Portland might actually be the next mile in. He loves buildings, he loved design, he wanted to be an architect. But the way things are now, it's unlikely that he or we will ever get a chance to find out. And I think that's just heartbreaking. Barack Obama was elected on a promise of hope and change. But we're in an enormous economic, political, and cultural crisis. This isn't a time of prosperity in which people feel like there's a lot to share and plenty to go around. And when crisis hits, both human beings and their countries, their nations, tend to close ranks and shut down. Our public officials will start hoarding things supposedly on our behalf, unwilling to share what little they think we've got. So we are likely to see proposals for change, but with somebody excluded because they're not seen as deserving of that change. Those people, I use those words deliberately, those people will be presented to us as too lazy, too uneducated, too foreign, or too freeloading to qualify for the jobs of the brand new economy, or for the great new healthcare system, universal healthcare system that we're going to build, or for the opportunities of a fully funded education system. Sometimes our elected officials and our leaders will tell us that they don't believe these things themselves, but that exclusion is a matter of practicality, that it is necessary to compromise who can be in and who has to be out in order to get something through a bipartisan Congress. Our job then is more urgent than it's ever been, and that is to insist on the fulfillment of all the promise that we felt last week.